The cold November wind cut through Mason Williams' face as he drove his 2015 Honda Civic through the streets of Foxborough, Massachusetts. At 28 years old, Mason seemed to carry the weight of an entire decade on his hunched shoulders. Gillette Stadium loomed majestically ahead, its lights gleaming against the gray sky, but for him, that sight was just a painful reminder of everything he had lost. Mason parked in the farthest spot from the stadium, where no one would recognize him. Dressed in a worn coat and a cap pulled low over his eyes, he watched New England Patriots fans excitedly entering for the game. 5 years ago, he too had worn the blue and red uniform, running across that same field as a promising wide receiver. Damn injury, he muttered to himself, instinctively touching his right knee that had changed everything. His mind drifted back to that fateful October day in 2019. It was his second year in the NFL, after being drafted in the 5th round out of the University of Connecticut. Mason was finally gaining the confidence of Tom Brady and coach Bill Belichick. On a seemingly simple play against the Cleveland Browns, his career crumbled in a split second. The phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Jessica Williams, his longtime girlfriend. "Mason, are you okay? You didn't come home last night." "I'm fine, Jess. Just needed some time to think." "Honey, you can't keep torturing yourself like this. It's been 5 years. Maybe it's time to..." "To what? Give up completely?" Mason interrupted, his voice heavy with frustration. "You don't understand. Football wasn't just my profession, Jess. It was who I was." Jessica sighed on the other end. She had watched Mason battle depression, work jobs he hated, train alone in empty gyms, keeping alive a hope that seemed increasingly distant. "I understand, baby. But look where you are now, working security at a mall, earning minimum wage, spending your savings on physical therapy that doctors say won't make a difference." Mason closed his eyes. Jessica was right, of course. After the injury, he had undergone 3 surgeries, months of rehabilitation, and when he finally managed to return to training, he was no longer the same player. His speed had decreased, his confidence was shattered. The Patriots released him at the beginning of the 2020 season, and since then, no other team had shown interest. "I know it seems crazy," said Mason, watching the last fans entering the stadium, "but I still feel like I have something to prove, that I can come back." "Mason, Jess, I need to hang up now. I love you." He hung up before she could respond and got out of the car. The cold Massachusetts air penetrated through his thin coat as he walked around the stadium. His legs automatically took him to the side where the players' locker rooms were located. Mason stopped in front of the staff entrance, where he had spent so many days of his life. He remembered the mornings arriving early to study plays, conversations with veterans, the adrenaline before games. Everything seemed so distant now. "Can I help you?" Mason turned and faced a stadium security guard, an older man with a serious expression. "No, I was just passing by," Mason replied, preparing to leave. "You're Mason Williams, aren't you?" The former player froze. It had been years since anyone recognized him. Yes." The security guard smiled. "I saw you play against the Dolphins in 2019. That 40-yard reception in the 4th quarter was incredible. Shame what happened after." Mason felt a lump in his throat. "Thanks for remembering. Hey, you know they're holding tryouts for the practice squad next week, right?" "Saw it on the internal bulletin board. Of course, it's mostly for college players, but..." "Tryouts?" Mason repeated, his heart racing. "Yeah, Tuesday morning, offensive positions. Probably just a formality, but..." The guard shrugged. Mason thanked him and returned to the car, but his mind was in turmoil. A tryout, a chance, even if minimal. He picked up his phone and searched for information about the event. Indeed, the Patriots were conducting an open tryout for the practice squad due to recent injuries. That night, in his small apartment in Quincy, Mason looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. His body was still in shape. He had never completely stopped training, but he could see the marks of time and frustration in his eyes. Jessica was sleeping in bed, and he didn't have the heart to wake her to tell her about the tryout. She had spent years watching him hurt emotionally with each rejection, each frustrated hope. Mason went to the small office they had converted into a sort of trophy room. On the walls, his Yukon and Patriots jerseys, photos with former teammates, newspaper clippings of his best moments. On a shelf, the Patriots helmet he had kept as a memento. He picked up the helmet and held it in his hands. It was heavier than he remembered, or maybe it was the weight of the memories it carried. "One last chance," he whispered to himself. "Just one last chance." The next morning, Mason woke up at 5 a.m., determined to make the most of every moment before the tryout. He had spent the night researching everything he could about the current Patriots roster, their offensive schemes, recent injuries that might create opportunities. Jessica was still sleeping deeply, and he dressed silently, grabbing the car keys. The local gym opened at 6 a.m., and he wanted to take advantage of every minute to prepare. The Quincy Athletic Club was nearly empty when he arrived. Mason knew every piece of equipment in that place. It had become his second home over the past 5 years. Tony Salvatore, the gym owner and former high school football coach, waved to him from the reception. "Starting early today, Mason." "I have a tryout tomorrow, Tony." Tony raised his eyebrows. "Really? After all this time?" "Patriots. Practice squad." The older man nodded slowly. "Are you ready for this?" "Mentally, I mean." Mason paused before answering. Tony had been one of the few people who had supported him during the hardest years, offering free membership when he couldn't pay, giving advice when things got tough. "I don't know, Tony, but I need to try." For 3 hours, Mason subjected himself to an intense workout. Running, squats, bench press, agility exercises. His knee protested a few times, but it was functioning. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, his physical therapist, had said that structurally it was fine. The problem was more psychological now. At 10 a.m., Mason went to Patriot Place, the commercial complex near the stadium, where there was a public training field. He brought some footballs and started practicing routes alone, imagining a non-existent quarterback. Out route, 15 yards. He murmured to himself, running the pattern perfectly. Slant, 7 yards. Comeback, 12 yards. Every movement was engraved in his muscle memory. During his years of depression and anger, training had been his only real therapy. Jessica had insisted he seek professional help, and he had tried. But conversations about accepting the new reality and finding new purposes had never helped him as much as running routes on empty fields. Around noon, he stopped at a local Dunkin' Donuts for lunch. He ordered just a sandwich and coffee, trying to keep his diet clean. While eating, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Mason William? This is Kevin Mitchell from the Patriots Human Resources Department." Mason's heart jumped. "Yes, that's me. I heard you signed up for tomorrow's tryout. Just wanting to confirm some contact information and check if you've had any recent professional activity with other teams." No activity since 2020. "Understood. And are you physically fit? No medical restrictions?" Mason hesitated for a split second. "Completely fit." "Perfect. The tryout will start at 8 a.m. sharp. Players Gate, East Side. Bring complete equipment and updated medical documentation." After hanging up, Mason felt a mixture of euphoria and terror. It was real. It was really happening. That afternoon, he drove to his mother's apartment in Dorchester. Eleanor William had raised Mason alone after his father abandoned them when he was 12. A strong woman who worked double shifts as a nurse to pay for his sports activities in high school and college. "My baby!" she exclaimed upon opening the door, wrapping him in a tight hug. At 58, Eleanor still had the energy of someone half her age. "Hi, Mom. Jessica called me. Said you've been acting strange lately. What's going on?" Mason told her about the tryout while she prepared his favorite tea in the small but cozy kitchen. Eleanor listened in silence, her expressions changing from concern to understanding. "Mason, honey, are you sure you want to go through this again? I remember how you were last time things didn't work out." "Mom, I know it seems crazy, but I need to try. If I don't try now, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Eleanor held her son's hands. "Do you remember when you were little and used to practice in the backyard? You'd stay out there until dark, throwing the ball up and catching it, running by yourself. Your father said it was a waste of time, that you should focus on studies." Mason remembered. Those memories were some of the happiest of his childhood. "I always knew you had something special, baby. And an injury can't take that away from you. But," she paused, looking deep into his eyes, "if this doesn't work out tomorrow, promise me you won't destroy yourself again. Promise you'll find a way to move forward." "I promise, Mom." That night, Mason returned home and found Jessica cooking his favorite dish, seasoned chicken with potatoes. She knew. Somehow she always knew when he needed extra support. "How did you find out?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "Your mom called me, said you had something important to tell me." Mason stepped back, looking into Jessica's green eyes. They had been together for 8 years, since their days at UConn. She had stood by him through everything: the initial success, the devastating injury, the years of struggle and depression. "Jess, I know you're tired of—" "Mason, stop." She placed her hand on his face. "I love you. I love the determined man you are, even when that determination sometimes hurts you. If you need to do this, I'll be here." They ate dinner in relative silence, both lost in thought. Afterward, Mason got his equipment from the closet where it had been stored and began organizing it. Shoulder pads, helmet, cleats, gloves. Everything still fit perfectly. "Are you nervous?" Jessica asked, sitting on the bed while he arranged his things. "Terrified," he admitted. "I haven't slept right for weeks just thinking about the possibility of having a chance. Now that it's really happening." "You'll do great. You're still the same player I watched dominate in college." Mason smiled for the first time in days. "Thanks for not telling me to be realistic about the chances. Honey, after watching you train obsessively for 5 years, I know you're more prepared now than you were when you were drafted." That night, Mason barely slept. He lay staring at the ceiling, visualizing plays, imagining different scenarios for the next day. At 4 a.m., he gave up trying to sleep and went to the living room, where he spent an hour meditating and warming up. When Jessica woke up at 6 a.m., she found him already dressed and ready. "What time did you wake up?" "I didn't sleep." She approached and kissed him softly. "Everything will be fine, baby. Regardless of what happens today, I'm proud of you for trying." Mason held Jessica for a long moment, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, trying to memorize that moment of peace before the storm that was coming. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too. Now go show them who Mason William is." The Gillette Stadium parking lot was starting to fill when Mason arrived at 7:30 a.m. He had left home an hour earlier than necessary, but anxiety wouldn't let him sit still. Other tryout candidates were arriving, young men of 22, 23 years old, fresh out of college, all looking confident and eager. Mason suddenly felt old. At 28, he was significantly above the average age of the other candidates. Some looked at him curiously, perhaps trying to remember where they had seen him before. "Aren't you that guy who played here a few years ago?" asked a young linebacker with a southern accent. "Yeah, for a short time," Mason replied, adjusting his equipment bag. "Cool, man. Respect for being here trying again." At 8 a.m. sharp, an assistant coach appeared and called all the candidates inside. There were about 40 men, divided between offensive and defensive positions. Mason followed the group through the familiar hallways he hadn't seen in 5 years. The visiting locker room was prepared for them with numbered temporary lockers. Mason received number 87, ironically the same number he had worn in his glory days. While changing, he could hear nervous conversations around him. "Dude, I ran a 4 at the college combine. My coach at University of Alabama said I have first-round potential if I get more experience. My agent knows someone inside here." Mason remained silent, focusing on his mental preparation. When he finished changing, he looked at himself in the mirror. The white practice uniform with number 87 made him look exactly like 5 years ago. The group was taken to the indoor practice field. It was November and too cold to train outside. Mason took a deep breath as he stepped onto the artificial turf. The bright lights, the smell of the field, the sound of cleats hitting the ground. Everything brought a flood of memories. "Gentlemen, welcome to Patriot Place," said the recruiting coordinator, a tall man named Matt Groh. "You'll have approximately 90 minutes to impress our coaching staff. We'll start with warm-up and speed tests, followed by position-specific drills." Mason looked around to see who was watching. There were several assistant coaches, scouts, and in the back, almost hidden in the shadows, he spotted a familiar figure, Bill Belichick. The legendary coach was there, clipboard in hand, observing silently. Mason's heart rate increased. He hadn't expected Belichick to be there personally for a practice squad tryout. This was either a very good sign or meant nothing at all. With Belichick, it was impossible to know. "Wide receivers over here," called position coach Troy Brown, a former Patriots legend himself. Mason joined a group of 8 receivers. Most were young, fast, with the hungry look of players trying to make their first professional impression. There was David Chen from Stanford, a speedster who had gone undrafted due to size concerns. Michael Rodriguez from Miami, who had decent college stats but questions about his hands. Jake Morrison from Ohio State, who looked like he could run through walls. "All right, gentlemen," Troy Brown began, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had won 3 Super Bowls. "We're going to start with basic route running. I want to see clean cuts, proper technique, and consistent hands. Remember, this isn't college anymore. Every detail matters." They started with simple patterns, out routes, slants, comebacks. Mason felt rust in his first few reps but quickly found his rhythm. His routes were sharper than the younger players, his cuts more precise. Years of obsessive practice were paying off. "Nice route, 87, Troy Brown called out, after Mason ran a perfect comeback route. "You've done this before." "Yes, coach. I played here from 2018 to 2020. Troy Brown studied him for a moment. "William, right? I remember now. You had good hands." The comment sent a wave of confidence through Mason. He began attacking each drill with renewed intensity. During the route tree exercise, where receivers had to run multiple patterns in sequence, Mason was clearly the best performer. His experience showed in the subtle details: how he set up defenders with his stem, how he used his eyes to sell routes, how he adjusted his speed to create separation. Jake Morrison, the Ohio State receiver, jogged up beside him during a water break. "Bro, you're making us all look bad out there. Where have you been?" "Working construction and security jobs mostly," Mason replied honestly. "For real? Man, you should still be playing somewhere." During the catching drills, Mason felt completely in his element. Tennis balls thrown from different angles, passes while running full speed, contested catches with defensive backs draped on him. His hands were as reliable as they had ever been. From the corner of his eye, Mason noticed Belichick had moved closer, now standing about 20 yards away, still taking notes. The speed and agility tests came next. This was where Mason was most concerned. At 28, with a surgically repaired knee, he knew he couldn't match the raw speed of the 22-year-olds. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.52 seconds, respectable for a possession receiver, but not impressive for someone trying to make a comeback. David Chen, the Stanford speedster, blazed a 4.38. Jake Morrison ran 4.41. Mason felt his stomach sink slightly. "Don't worry about the 40 time," Troy Brown said quietly to Mason during the next water break. "We both know football speed is different from track speed." The final portion was situational drills, red zone patterns, third down conversions, 2-minute drill scenarios. This was where Mason's experience and football intelligence really shone. He consistently got open, caught everything thrown his way, and even made suggestions to younger players about leverage and positioning. In one drill, they ran a crossing pattern against press coverage. The defensive back, a practice squad player named Cameron Davis, was physical and aggressive. Mason used his experience to create just enough separation at the line, caught the pass in traffic, and absorbed a big hit while maintaining possession. "That's how you catch in traffic," Troy Brown shouted. "Everybody see what 87 just did? That's professional-level ball security." As the session wound down, Mason felt cautiously optimistic. He had clearly outperformed most of the other receivers in everything except pure speed. His route running was superior, his hands were reliable, and his football IQ was evident. The candidates were dismissed with the standard "we'll be in touch" message. As Mason gathered his equipment, he noticed Belichick approaching Troy Brown. They spoke quietly for about 2 minutes, with both occasionally glancing in Mason's direction. Walking to the parking lot, Mason felt the familiar mixture of hope and dread. He had performed well, but in the NFL, performing well didn't guarantee anything. Politics, salary cap considerations, roster construction. There were 100 factors beyond performance that influenced these decisions. His phone rang as he reached his car. "Jessica, how did it go?" I think it went well. I felt like myself out there for the first time in years." "That's amazing, baby. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks. Now comes the hard part. Waiting." That evening, Mason tried to distract himself by watching film of current Patriots receivers. Julian Edelman had retired, leaving a void in the slot position that the team hadn't adequately filled. Jacoby Myers was solid, but could use support. There was opportunity there, if Mason could convince them he was worth the risk. His mother called around 8 p.m. "How did my baby do today?" "Good, I think, Mom. Really good. I've been praying all day. Whatever happens, you showed courage by trying." "Thanks, Mom. That means everything." Before bed, Mason sat in his trophy room, looking at the photos and memorabilia from his playing days. Jessica joined him, curling up beside him on the small couch. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Just remembering what it felt like to belong somewhere, to be part of something bigger than myself." Jessica squeezed his hand. "You know, regardless of what happens with football, you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." "I know. But Jess, today reminded me of who I used to be, who I still am, underneath all the doubt and fear. I've always known who you are, Mason William. The question is whether you're ready to believe it again." 3 days had passed since the tryout, and Mason was starting to lose hope. In the NFL, no news was usually bad news. Teams typically called within 24-48 hours if they were interested. He had thrown himself into work at Quincy Mall, where he worked security, trying to distract himself from constantly checking his phone. "You're going to wear a hole in that phone screen," joked his co-worker, Robert Santiago, an older Puerto Rican man who had become something of a mentor to Mason over the past 2 years. "Sorry, Roberto. Just waiting on something important." "The football thing Jessica told me about?" Mason nodded. Roberto was one of the few people at work who knew about his past. Most of his co-workers had no idea they were working alongside a former NFL player. "Listen, hermano," Roberto said, adjusting his security radio. "Whatever happens, you already won by trying. That takes more courage than most people have." It was Thursday afternoon when Mason's phone finally rang. Unknown number with a 508 area code. Foxborough. Mason William. "Mason, this is Kevin Mitchell from the Patriots organization. Do you have a minute to talk?" Mason's heart started pounding. "Yes, absolutely. Coach Belichick would like to meet with you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Can you make it to Gillette Stadium?" Yes, of course. Can I ask what this is about?" "The coach will explain everything when you meet. Just come to the main entrance and ask for Kevin Mitchell. Dress professionally. This isn't a workout." After hanging up, Mason stood in the middle of the mall's main corridor, stunned. Shoppers flowed around him, but he felt like he was in a bubble. A meeting with Bill Belichick. The Bill Belichick wanted to meet with him personally. He immediately called Jessica. "They want to meet with me tomorrow. Belichick himself." "Oh my God, Mason. What do you think it means?" "I have no idea. It could be anything. Maybe they want to offer me a practice squad spot. Maybe they want to tell me no in person. Maybe they want to use me as a coach or scout. Or maybe," Jessica said softly, "they want to offer you exactly what you've been dreaming about." That night, Mason barely ate dinner. He tried on 3 different outfits, finally settling on navy slacks, a white dress shirt, and a blue blazer. Patriots colors, he realized with a smile. You look handsome, Jessica said, straightening his collar. And nervous. Terrified is more accurate. Mason, remember what your mom always says. You belong in that building. You earned your place there once, and you can earn it again. Friday morning crawled by. Mason couldn't concentrate on anything. He kept replaying the tryout in his mind, analyzing every moment, every interaction. What had Belichick seen? What was he thinking? At 1:30 p.m., Mason walked through the main entrance of Gillette Stadium. The lobby was impressive, filled with Patriots memorabilia and Super Bowl trophies. A receptionist directed him to a seating area where he waited, palms sweating despite the air conditioning. Mason William? He looked up to see Kevin Mitchell, a middle-aged man in a Patriots polo shirt. That's me. Follow me. Coach Belichick is ready for you. They walked through hallways Mason remembered from his playing days, past meeting rooms and offices. The familiar smell of the building, a mixture of leather, cleaning supplies, and that indefinable scent of professional sports facilities, brought back a flood of memories. Kevin stopped outside a door marked Head Coach and knocked. Come in. Mason followed Kevin into Bill Belichick's office. The legendary coach was sitting behind his desk, wearing his trademark hoodie, even in a formal meeting. The office was exactly what Mason expected. Neat, organized, filled with game film equipment and whiteboards covered in X's and O's. Mason, have a seat, Belichick said without looking up from a folder he was reading. Mason sat in the chair across from the desk, trying to control his breathing. This was Bill Belichick, the man who had coached Tom Brady to 6 Super Bowl victories, one of the greatest football minds in history. After what felt like an eternity but was probably 30 seconds, Belichick closed the folder and looked directly at Mason. I've been watching film of your tryout. I also pulled up all your old college tape and your film from when you played here. Mason nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Your route running Tuesday was the best I saw from any receiver. Your hands are still reliable. Your football IQ is clearly high. Belichick paused. But you're 28 years old coming off a 5-year absence from professional football, and you don't have the speed you once had. Mason felt his heart sinking. This sounded like a very polite rejection. However, Belichick continued, football isn't just about measurables. It's about finding ways to help your team win games. And sometimes the best players aren't the fastest or the youngest. Belichick leaned back in his chair. I remember you from your time here, Mason. You were never the most talented receiver on the roster, but you were reliable. You caught the ball when it mattered. You understood leverage and positioning. Most importantly, you prepared like a professional. Thank you, Coach. I'm not done. Belichick's expression remained neutral. The reason I wanted to meet with you personally is because I have a proposition. It's not what you're expecting. Mason waited, afraid to breathe. We have an opening for an assistant wide receivers coach. It's primarily a development role, working with practice squad players, helping with film study, assisting with route concepts. The pay is significantly less than a player's salary, but it's a foot in the door for a coaching career. Mason felt his stomach drop. A coaching position, not playing. I appreciate the offer, Coach, but let me finish, Belichick interrupted. The position would also include eligibility for our practice squad. If you perform well in the coaching role and stay in playing shape, there could be opportunities to suit up during the season if we have injuries. Mason's brain struggled to process what he was hearing. A coaching position with practice squad eligibility. It wasn't the direct path back to playing he had dreamed of, but it was a path. Coach, I'm interested, but can I ask why you're offering this to me specifically? For the first time in the meeting, Belichick's expression softened slightly. Mason, in my 50 years of coaching, I've learned that football is ultimately about character. Talent gets you opportunities, but character determines what you do with those opportunities. Belichick stood up and walked around the desk to face Mason directly. 5 years ago, you suffered a devastating injury that would have ended most players' careers. Instead of accepting that reality, you spent 5 years preparing for a comeback that 99% of people would tell you was impossible. You showed up to a practice squad tryout in better condition than players half your age. That's not talent, Mason. That's character. Mason felt his eyes starting to water. In the modern NFL, we're always looking for competitive advantages. Sometimes that advantage isn't a player who runs a 40-yard dash. Sometimes it's a person who understands what it means to never give up, who can teach that mindset to younger players. Belichick returned to his seat. I'm offering you this position because I believe you have something to teach our players that can't be found in any playbook. The question is, are you willing to take a different path to get back to where you want to be? Mason took a deep breath. It wasn't the direct return to playing he had envisioned, but it was a chance. More than that, it was Bill Belichick telling him he had value beyond just his ability to catch passes. Coach, when would you need an answer? Now. The bluntness of the response startled Mason, but it was pure Belichick. If you accept, you'll start Monday. If you decline, you walk out that door and this conversation never happened. There's no middle ground, no time to think it over. Football is about making decisions quickly with incomplete information. Mason thought about Jessica, about his mother, about Roberto at the mall, about all the people who had supported him through the dark years. He thought about the young receivers he had watched at the tryout, hungry and talented but lacking experience. Most of all, he thought about 5-year-old Mason in his mother's backyard, throwing a football to himself for hours, dreaming of playing in the NFL. Coach, Mason said, standing up, I accept. For the first time in the meeting, Belichick smiled, just barely, but it was there. Welcome back to the Patriots, Mason. As Mason shook Belichick's hand, he felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. He felt like he belonged. Mason's first day as assistant wide receivers coach was a whirlwind of emotions. Walking into the Gillette Stadium facility at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, wearing a Patriots coaching polo shirt with his name embroidered on it, felt surreal. The same hallways where he had once walked as a player now held different significance. He was here in a new capacity, with new responsibilities. Troy Brown, the wide receivers coach, greeted him in the meeting room with a genuine smile. Good to have you back, Mason. I'll be honest. When Coach Belichick told me about this arrangement, I was intrigued. We've never had someone in this position before. I appreciate the opportunity, Coach Brown. What exactly do you need me to focus on? Right now, we have 6 receivers on the practice squad, ranging from undrafted rookies to second-year players who haven't quite found their footing. Your job is to help bridge the gap between raw talent and professional readiness. Troy led Mason to a smaller meeting room where they would hold position meetings. The walls were covered with root trees, defensive recognition charts, and photos of Patriots receivers throughout history. The thing about coaching, Troy continued, is that it's not just about knowing football. It's about understanding people. Each of these young guys has different needs, different ways of learning, different obstacles they're facing. At 8 a.m., the practice squad receivers filed into the meeting room. Mason recognized some faces from the tryout the previous week, including David Chen from Stanford and Michael Rodriguez from Miami. There was also Tommy Williams, a second-year player from Clemson, who had shown flashes but struggled with consistency. Gentlemen, Troy Brown announced, I want you to meet Mason William. He's joining our coaching staff as assistant receivers coach. Some of you may remember Mason from his playing days here. David Chen raised his hand tentatively. Coach William, weren't you at our tryout last week? Mason smiled. I was. And please, just call me Mason. I was in the same position you guys are in, trying to prove I belonged here. So how did you end up coaching instead of playing? Asked Tommy Williams. Troy Brown stepped in. Mason is actually eligible for practice squad activation if situations arise during the season. This is a unique arrangement where he'll be developing you guys while staying ready himself. Mason could see the confusion on their faces, but also curiosity. Over the next hour, he led them through film study, breaking down professional-level route concepts and defensive reads. It was immediately clear that while these players had talent, they were missing the subtle nuances that separated college football from the NFL. Michael, Mason said, pausing the film on a crossing route. "What do you see wrong with this route?" Michael Rodriguez studied the screen. The receiver got open and caught the ball. "Looks good to me." That's exactly the problem. In college, getting open and catching the ball is enough. In the NFL, how you get open matters just as much. Watch his stem. Mason rewound the play. He's telegraphing his break to the linebacker. Against better competition, that's an interception. They spent the rest of the morning working on route precision on the practice field. Mason found himself naturally slipping into teaching mode, sharing insights he had learned during his playing career and the knowledge he had accumulated during his 5 years of obsessive film study. "Mason," Troy Brown pulled him aside during a water break, "you have a gift for this. These guys are absorbing more in one morning than they usually do in a week." After practice, Mason stayed behind to work with Tommy Williams, who was struggling with his releases against press coverage. They spent an extra hour working on hand fighting and footwork. Mason, Tommy said as they finished up, "can I ask you something personal?" "Sure." "Were you ever as frustrated as I am? I feel like I'm good enough, but I keep making little mistakes that cost me opportunities." Mason set down the football and looked at the young receiver. "Tommy, I spent 5 years thinking I wasn't good enough because of one injury. I worked dead-end jobs, questioned everything about myself, and almost gave up on the thing I loved most. The little mistakes you're making, they're fixable. The self-doubt, that's the real enemy." Tommy nodded, absorbing the words. "Here's what I learned," Mason continued. "Excellence isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistently good enough that when the opportunity comes, you're ready. Keep working on those details, trust the process, and don't let frustration make you press too hard." Over the following weeks, Mason settled into a routine that felt both familiar and entirely new. His days started at 5:30 a.m. with his own workout. He was determined to stay in playing shape just in case. Then came film study preparation, position meetings with the practice squad receivers, on-field coaching during practice, and often staying late to work with individual players. The transformation in the practice squad receivers was noticeable. David Chen's route running became more precise. Michael Rodriguez's hands improved dramatically. Tommy Williams started showing the consistency that had made him a draft prospect coming out of Clemson. "William," Bill Belichick called out after practice one Thursday in late November, "walk with me." Mason's heart rate increased. Direct interactions with Belichick were still intimidating, even in his coaching role. "How are you adjusting to the coaching side?" Belichick asked as they walked toward the facility. "I love it, Coach. Teaching these guys reminds me why I fell in love with football in the first place. The practice squad receivers have shown significant improvement. Troy tells me that's primarily your influence. They're talented players, Coach. They just needed someone to help them see the game from a professional perspective." Belichick stopped walking and turned to face Mason. "I'm going to be direct with you. We're likely to have some roster moves coming up after Thanksgiving. Jakobi Meyers is dealing with a knee issue that might require him to miss some time." Mason felt his pulse quicken. "I want you to start taking some practice reps with the main offense. Not many. Just enough to evaluate where you are as a player. Can you handle that while maintaining your coaching responsibilities?" "Absolutely, Coach." "Good. And Mason, don't overthink it. Just play football." That evening, Mason called his mother to share the news. "My baby is getting his chance," Eleanor said, her voice full of emotion. "I always knew this day would come. Mom, it's just practice reps. Nothing's guaranteed." "Mason William, you listen to me. You've been preparing for this moment for 5 years. You're ready. Now you just need to believe it." The next Monday, Mason found himself in the main offensive meeting room for the first time since 2020. Sitting alongside established players like Jakobi Meyers, Nelson Aguilar, and Devontae Parker felt surreal. Some of the players remembered him from his previous stint with the team. "Yo, Mason," called out Jakobi Meyers. "Troy told us you might be getting some reps. That's awesome, man." "Thanks, Jakobi. How's the knee?" "It's been better. But hey, if I have to miss some time, At least we've got someone reliable to step in. During practice, Mason took reps in 11-on-11 drills for the first time in over 5 years. His first target was a simple slant route from Mac Jones. The ball came out quickly, Mason caught it cleanly, and he immediately felt the rush of competing at the highest level again. "Good route, 87, called out offensive coordinator Matt Patricia. As the week progressed, Mason's role expanded. He was running with the second-team offense, taking reps in various packages. His route running was sharp, his hands remained reliable, and most importantly, he was making the mental adjustments that showed he belonged. On Friday, during red zone drills, Mason found himself matched up against Mason Jones, one of the team's top defensive backs. It was a fade route in the corner of the end zone, a play that required perfect timing and body positioning. Mac Jones delivered a perfect back shoulder throw. Mason adjusted his route, boxed out the defender, and made a textbook catch for a touchdown. "That's how you use leverage," shouted Bill Belichick from the sideline. "Everybody see that? That's professional-level ball skills." After practice, Troy Brown approached Mason in the locker room. "How does it feel to be back out there?" "Like I never left," Mason replied honestly. "Different in some ways, but the fundamentals are still there. Coach Belichick wants to see you in his office." Mason's stomach tightened as he walked to Belichick's office. The coach was watching film when Mason knocked. "Come in and sit down." Belichick turned off the film and faced Mason directly. "I've been evaluating your practice performance over the past 2 weeks. Your route running is NFL caliber. Your hands are reliable. Your football IQ is evident in how you adjust to coverage." Mason waited for the but. "However, you're still not the fastest receiver on the field. You're 28 years old, in a young man's game. The question is, can you provide value that goes beyond physical attributes?" "I believe I can, coach. Prove it to me. Jacoby's knee is going to keep him out for at least 3 weeks. I'm promoting you to the active roster." Mason felt the room spinning slightly. "Coach, you'll be active for Sunday's game against Buffalo. Your role will be limited, special teams, and specific offensive packages where your experience and reliability matter more than speed." Belichick stood up, indicating the meeting was over. "Mason, 5 years ago you were a promising young receiver who got hurt. Today you're a mature professional who understands what it takes to succeed at this level. Don't try to be who you were. Be who you are now." Walking out of Belichick's office, Mason felt a profound sense of completion. Not because he had achieved his ultimate goal, there was still work to do, but because he finally understood what Belichick had seen in him. It wasn't about recapturing his youth or proving that his injury hadn't changed him. It was about embracing who he had become through the struggle. A player whose value came not just from talent, but from wisdom, preparation, and an unshakable understanding of what it meant to belong. That night, Mason sat in his apartment with Jessica, both of them staring at the official Patriots roster notification on his phone. "I can't believe it's real," Jessica said, tears in her eyes. 5 years ago, I thought my story was over. Now I realize it was just beginning a new chapter. I'm so proud of you, baby, not just for making it back, but for how you made it back." Mason looked around their small apartment, the same place where he had spent years questioning his worth, fighting depression, and holding on to a dream that seemed impossible. "You know what the craziest part is?" he said. "I'm not the same player I was before. I'm actually better in some ways. More complete. I understand the game differently now. And most importantly," Jessica added, "you understand yourself differently." That Sunday morning, as Mason put on his Patriots uniform for the first time in over 5 years, he thought about all the people who had supported him through the dark years. His mother, who never stopped believing. Jessica, who stood by him when he didn't believe in himself. Tony at the gym, Roberto at the mall, Dr. Rodriguez, the physical therapist, and even the security guard who had told him about the tryout. But mostly he thought about Bill Belichick, the coach who had seen something in him that went beyond statistics and measurables, who had given him not just a second chance, but a different kind of chance. A chance to prove that sometimes the most valuable players aren't the ones with the most talent, but the ones with the most character. As he ran onto the field for warm-ups, Mason Williams wasn't trying to recapture his past. He was creating his future, one rep at a time. December in New England carried a bitter cold that cut through even the heaviest winter gear. As Mason jogged onto the Gillette Stadium field for pre-game warm-ups before the Buffalo Bills game, the familiar rush of adrenaline mixed with something deeper, a profound sense of gratitude that still caught him off guard. It had been 3 weeks since his promotion to the active roster, and Mason had made the most of his limited opportunities. 2 catches on third down conversions, solid special teams play, and most importantly, he had proven to be exactly what Belichick had hoped for. A reliable veteran presence who elevated the play of those around him. "You ready for this, old man?" joked Nelson Aguilar as they stretched together on the sideline. "Old man?" Mason laughed. "I'm 28, not 38. In receiver years, that's basically ancient," Nelson shot back with a grin. "But seriously, it's cool having you back out here. You bring a different energy to the group." The Bills game was crucial for playoff positioning. Buffalo had a potent offense led by Josh Allen, and the Patriots needed every weapon at their disposal. Mason knew his role would likely be limited to special teams and maybe a few snaps in specific packages, but he was ready for whatever the game demanded. As the national anthem played, Mason stood on the sideline looking up at the crowd. Somewhere in section 114, his mother was wearing his jersey, probably crying with pride. Jessica was a few rows behind her, having bought season tickets the week after his promotion, their first major purchase that wasn't absolutely necessary in years. The game started poorly for New England. Buffalo jumped to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter, with Josh Allen looking unstoppable. The Patriots' offense was struggling to find rhythm, and by halftime they trailed 21-7. In the locker room, Bill Belichick was characteristically calm but direct. "We're getting beat on execution, not scheme. Clean up the mistakes, play our game, and we'll be fine." As the team prepared to take the field for the second half, Belichick pulled Mason aside. "William, Jacoby's knee is bothering him more than he's letting on. You're going to see more reps in the second half. Are you ready?" "Yes, coach." "Good. And Mason, play free. Don't overthink it." The third quarter saw the Patriots slowly chip away at the deficit. A touchdown pass to Devontae Parker, a field goal after a Bills turnover. Entering the fourth quarter, New England trailed 21-17. Mason had played several snaps already, primarily in short yardage situations where his reliable hands and route precision were valued over speed. On each target, he had done exactly what was expected: catch the ball, get the necessary yardage, move the chains. With 8:47 remaining in the game and the Patriots facing a crucial 3rd and 7 from their own 38-yard line, offensive coordinator Matt Patricia made a call that surprised everyone. "We're going trips right Y option. William, you're the Y." It was a play Mason knew well. A route combination where the inside receiver read the coverage and adjusted accordingly. Against man coverage, it would be a quick slant. Against zone, a sit route in the soft spot. As Mason jogged onto the field, he could hear the crowd noise intensifying. This was a moment where the game could swing either way. Convert, and the Patriots would be in prime scoring position. Fail, and they'd likely be punting the ball back to Buffalo with time running out. Mac Jones called out the signals at the line of scrimmage. Mason read the safety rotation and recognized cover 2 zone coverage. The linebacker covering his area was playing with outside leverage, expecting the quick slant. Mason would need to sit in the hole between the linebacker and the safety. The ball was snapped. Mason released inside, sold the slant route to freeze the linebacker, then settled into the zone coverage gap at exactly 8 yards, 1 yard past the first down marker. Mac Jones, reading the same coverage, delivered the ball precisely where it needed to be. Mason caught it cleanly, absorbed a hit from the arriving safety, and held on for a 12-yard gain and a crucial first down. "That's how you read coverage," shouted Troy Brown from the sideline. The successful conversion energized the entire offense. 3 plays later, the Patriots scored a touchdown to take their first lead of the game, 24-21. Buffalo responded quickly, driving down for a field goal to tie the game at 24-24 with 3:52 remaining. The Patriots got the ball back with a chance to win the game, but they would need to move 75 yards against a desperate Bills defense. The drive started promisingly. Mac Jones connected with Nelson Aguilar for 18 yards, then found Devontae Parker on a comeback route for 12 more. But on 2nd and 6 from the Buffalo 47-yard line, disaster struck. Mac Jones was hit as he threw, and the ball wobbled toward the sideline, where it was intercepted by Bills safety Jordan Poyer. Buffalo took over with 2:14 remaining, needing only a field goal to win. The Patriots' defense forced a punt, but the Bills punter boomed a 52-yard kick that pinned New England at their own 8-yard line with 1:03 remaining and only one timeout. 92 yards, 63 seconds, one timeout. The margin for error was non-existent. Mac Jones quickly completed short passes to get the Patriots to their own 23-yard line, but the clock was ticking aggressively. With 47 seconds remaining, facing 2nd and 7 from their own 26, Matt Patricia called a play that would become legendary in Patriots lore. 4 verticals side adjust. William, you're the slot receiver. 4 vertical routes, all receivers running straight up the field with adjustments based on coverage. It was a high-risk call, but with the field compressed and time running out, the Patriots needed a big play. Mason lined up in the slot, with Buffalo showing what looked like cover one-man coverage with a single high safety. As the play developed, Mason read the linebacker covering him, a fast athletic player who was playing with inside leverage, clearly concerned about a quick slant. At the snap, Mason sold the inside route for 3 steps, causing the linebacker to bite hard to the inside. Then, using a move he had perfected during thousands of hours of practice over the past 5 years, Mason planted his outside foot and broke toward the sideline. The separation was perfect, 3 yards of space in a game where inches mattered. Mac Jones, under pressure from the Bills' pass rush, stepped up in the pocket and fired a strike toward the sideline. The pass was slightly behind Mason, requiring him to adjust his body while maintaining his speed. In college, this would have been a difficult catch. For a 28-year-old receiver with surgically repaired knees, running full speed with a linebacker bearing down on him, it should have been nearly impossible. But Mason William was no longer the young player who had been injured 5 years earlier. He was a complete professional who had spent half a decade preparing for exactly this moment. He turned his body, extended his hands, and made a spectacular over-the-shoulder catch while maintaining his balance and speed. The impact from the pursuing linebacker sent him tumbling toward the sideline, but not before he had gained 23 yards and gotten out of bounds to stop the clock. The crowd at Gillette Stadium erupted. On the sideline, Bill Belichick pumped his fist, a rare display of emotion from the usually stoic coach. "That's my baby!" Eleanor Williams screamed from section 114, tears streaming down her face. 3 rows back, Jessica was jumping up and down, screaming so loudly that she couldn't hear her own voice. The catch had moved the Patriots to the Buffalo 51-yard line with 31 seconds remaining. 3 plays later, Nick Folk connected on a 38-yard field goal as time expired, giving New England a 27-24 victory. In the locker room after the game, Mason was surrounded by reporters, teammates, and coaches. The questions came rapidly. "Mason, what was going through your mind on that catch? How does it feel to make such a crucial play after everything you've been through? What would you say to other players who might be facing similar adversity?" Mason answered each question thoughtfully, but his mind kept drifting to a conversation he'd had with Bill Belichick just before the press conference. "William," Belichick had said, pulling him aside in the hallway outside the locker room, "I want you to know something. That catch wasn't just about talent or preparation, though both were evident. It was about character. In 5 years of coaching, I've seen thousands of players in high-pressure situations. Most of them think about the consequences of failure. You thought about the technique required for success." Belichick had paused, his expression more serious than usual. "I've been coaching for 50 years, and I can count on one hand the number of players who have impressed me more with their journey than their destination. You're one of them." Now, as Mason finally escaped the media scrum and walked toward the parking lot, he found Jessica and his mother waiting by his car. "I can't believe I'm saying this," Eleanor said, hugging her son tightly. "But that was even better than when you got drafted." "Why?" Mason asked. "Because this time, I knew you earned every bit of it." Jessica squeezed his hand as they walked. "So what happens now?" Mason thought about the question. 6 months ago, he had been working security at a mall, wondering if he would ever play professional football again. Tonight, he had made the game-winning play in a crucial NFL victory. "Now," he said, "I keep doing what I've been doing, preparing, working, earning my place every single day." "And if someone asks you about your comeback story?" Jessica pressed. Mason smiled, looking back at the stadium lights one more time before getting in his car. "I'll tell them it was never really about coming back. It was about moving forward. And sometimes moving forward means taking a path you never expected, with people who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself." As they drove away from Gillette Stadium that night, Mason William wasn't thinking about his past or even his future. He was thinking about Monday's practice, about the young receivers he was coaching, about the next opportunity to prove himself. Because he had learned something during his 5-year journey that no amount of talent could teach. True success isn't about reaching a destination. It's about becoming the kind of person who deserves to be there. And in Bill Belichick's office the next morning, the legendary coach would write something in Mason Williams' file that he had never written about any player before. "Some players are born champions. Others become champions through adversity. Mason William chose to become a champion through service to others, and in doing so, discovered that the greatest victories are the ones that make everyone around you better." The comeback was complete, but the story, the real story, was just beginning.